Hello and welcome to our World War II Part 2 video. This image focuses on the war itself, mainly on the battles. And what better way to remember World War II than two battling bands in the desert? With these bands as your anchor, let's jump right in and listen to some tunes. Take a look at the first band to the left of the stage. They call themselves the Owl Eyes, which should help you remember the Allies. Each band member represents one of the Allied nations. First, take a look at the guitarist, who looks like he's from a famous British rock band. Next, we've got the Soviet Union on the drums. Just look at that hammer and sickle. Next, take a look at our French horn player. And who can forget the Allies' lead singer, the United States? In summary, the Allies were composed of Britain, the Soviet Union, France, and the US. China was also considered an ally, but they're not shown here. Across from the Allies is the rival band, A-KISS, which sounds a lot like Axis. This band represents the Axis powers. We have Germany on the German horn, Italy on the mandolin, and Japan on the shamisen. Next, look at the first person in the audience. She is sitting in a mini pool, which is how you know this is a cool concert. She also has a string of pearls around her neck. The pearls in the water should make you think of Pearl Harbor, which is when the US got involved in the war. She is fanning herself off with a Japanese fan, which should help remind you that the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. They attacked the USS Arizona, which you can remember by looking at the cactus next to her. The concert is in the desert after all, just like Arizona. Now let's focus on some of the military events. Take a look at the concert goer dressed in an elephant costume. This person is standing next to a person wearing a pizza costume. Concert goers these days just keep getting crazier, don't they? This should help you remember that the Allies began fighting in northern Africa and then went north to liberate Italy. The elephant stands for Africa, and the pizza stands for Italy. Next, look down at the French guy playing with a beach ball. There are always beach balls at concerts, aren't there? This French person represents the invasion of Normandy, which was when the Allies invaded the beaches of Normandy to liberate France. Next, take a look at the ball itself. It's turning around and around because the Battle of Normandy was the turning point of the war. It was the largest battle, and it created a second war front in Europe. Also note the googly eyes on the ball. This is to remind you that General Eisenhower was the Allied commander. Get it? Eyes for Eisenhower? Looking somewhat less trim than the French guy is an American beachgoer. His belly is bulging out of his shirt, which should remind you of the Battle of the Bulge. This was the deadliest battle for Americans, which is why he is wearing an American shirt. Although this battle was especially deadly, Germany was unable to permanently break Allied lines. The Battle of the Bulge was the last major German offensive. Not that long after, Germany surrendered and the Allies had victory in Europe. Next, take a look at the malt stand called Yalta's Malts. This should remind you of the Yalta Conference, which was a post-war conference that helped decide what to do with Germany. Look at that delicious German sausage all cut up into pieces. I guess Yalta's Malts also serves food. This cut-up German sausage should remind you that Germany was divided into zones of occupation after the war. The Yalta Conference also gave the Soviet Union control over most of Eastern Europe, which is why there is an Eastern Europe map next to the sausages. Also, take a look at the fridge in the back of the malt stand. This is our Cold War fridge, which should help you remember that this marked the beginning of the US's Cold War with the Soviet Union. Soon after the Yalta Conference, FDR died and Vice President Harry Truman took over. Take a look at the jerky on the counter. This is deer jerky, and it's meant to symbolize Franklin D. Roosevelt's death. There's a true man food inspector looking at the meat, which should help you remember that Truman took over after FDR's death. Before we finish off this image, I wanted to touch briefly on the war in Japan. Japan is represented by the Japanese cherry blossoms in the top right corner of the image. How are there trees growing in the desert? General Douglas MacArthur was the commander of the Pacific Theater, and he is represented by the kid hopping from rock to rock. This hopping is meant to represent island hopping, which was MacArthur's strategy to get to mainland Japan. Finally, take a look at the little kid standing next to the fat man. The little boy dressed as a hero is meant to represent Hiroshima, which is where the little boy atomic bomb was dropped. The older kid nagging at him represents Nagasaki, which is where the Fat Man bomb was dropped. And that's it for the battles of World War II. This year's Battle of the Bands was quite a show, and I like that they decided to have it in the desert. Anyway, on to the next image.